Okay, so you recall I've been talking about positive law, and a law is made positive and it has a positive law citation. And I've been talking about things that are like titles that don't have a positive law citation, and that these things are not laws, they're more contractual. And I showed you the difference between what they look like. And I used 3 examples, one with a positive law citation and a couple without. Some are codified, some are enacted, and they have all these other words and phrases that they use, but they don't have a positive law citation. So I'm reading this book called The Legal Analyst, and there's a section in here where he's talking about the prisoner's dilemma. So he explains what the prisoner's dilemma is, and then he gives a few examples of what prisoner's dilemma is. Okay, so the prisoner's dilemma is about how when we cooperate, we have a better outcome. He mentions game theory and a few different phrases that we've talked about on this channel, and he also says a lot of things that are said in or by Austin in his book, How to Do Things with Words. So it's about cooperation. The prisoner's dilemma is about cooperation for a better outcome. So the examples he gives, one of them is like labor unions. So in labor unions, he says we all should cooperate, or the union people should all be part of the union and cooperate, because it gives a better outcome than there would be if people didn't cooperate. And then, of course, someone can cheat to ensure a better outcome for himself. And he also uses the example of gaps, and he talks about gaps. Before I get into the next example, he talks about gaps, large gaps and small gaps. So he says large gaps reminded me of something about taxes, and how even the rich can figure out a way to get out of paying taxes, but in the long run, because they can claim exemptions and different things, it's better for them in the long run if they just go ahead and play along. And then while the rest of us are not able to take all these exemptions and tax breaks and stuff, we're playing along because we don't have the breaks that they get. He doesn't say that. That's what I'm assuming, because he says tax breaks, gaps, wide gaps and tax breaks. So to clarify this, I'm going to read some of this. So he says, naturally, the union keeps a close watch on its members and deals severely and visibly with anyone caught shirking. These steps are its way of solving the prisoner's dilemma. And of course, the union has to worry not only about people cheating, but about people leaving. Its project is to establish the widest possible gap between the benefits of being a member who plays by the rules, and the benefits of cheating or leaving entirely. The smaller the gap gets, the more vulnerable the union becomes to collapse on account of prisoner's dilemma. The monitoring of members and the punishment of them, and all of the other efforts unions make, may be expensive, but they are considered worth it to keep the gains from cooperation. In this case, the deals the union extracts by collective bargaining. The law sometimes helps to keep the gap wide by giving tax breaks and subsidies of other kinds that a group can use to make cooperation more rewarding for its members and to help nail defectors. So there are people who defect from these prisoners' dilemmas, these situations where it's better, where they say it's better for people to cooperate. by narrowing the gap, or making sure that the gap is not too wide. So it says he uses tax breaks, and that kind of gave me this idea that, well, rich people can afford better tax attorneys, better accountants, and that kind of thing than the middle class or lower class people are. So it's more beneficial for them if the government offers subsidies and tax breaks for these corporations and stuff that the lower people don't get. So the lower people stay in because they don't really know any better, and then the richer people stay in because they make out. He talks about bankruptcy, but he also talks about, he calls this example the tragedy of the commons. So what he's saying now is like common land that is able to be used by everyone, that the government has control over. He says it's better that there's some control over these lands so that the resources aren't plundered. So if they say, well, you have to have a license and you have to catch fish only this size and that kind of thing, that it preserves resources. And he says that's kind of like one of the benefits of having private property, is that when you own your property, you're more likely to preserve your natural resources than you would be if you go onto someone else's property and use their resources, or you go onto common lands and fish or hunt or whatever, that you're less likely to preserve the resources. And this is the large and small gap. So when I started this video just now, I was talking to you about the positive law and the non-positive law, and how non-positive law is more of a contract, and it requires you to sign things or do things. And this is part of the prisoner's dilemma situation. So if they don't really have control over these lands, but they pretend to have control over the lands, they say it's better that way, and it's better that everyone participates, because if they don't, the lands will be plundered. So in my mind, I'm thinking also about the birth certificate, the driver's license, the social security card, the IRS, all these things where you're required to sign something or do something to be contracted in, so that you become part of the prisoners and the prisoner's dilemma. That he says it's better to cooperate. And what he says here, the regulation works like a contract. That's a quote on page 107, the end of the first paragraph. The regulation works like a contract. By taking away some of our choices, it makes all of us better off if it works. Okay, so it's a situation of cooperation. If we don't cooperate, things go bad. If we do cooperate, it's better for everybody. That's the prisoner's dilemma. However, our cooperation is a type of contract, and contracts are always voluntary. Okay, so I just wanted to make this point. It's The Legal Analyst by Ward Farnsworth. He has several good books out if you want to get them. Some of them on like metaphors and stuff on English language, but this is a book, part of a class that I'm taking, and it was required reading. So I had this book. I got it off Amazon. I don't know if it's available online anywhere. It's a fairly new book. I don't think it's on archive for download, so you'll probably have to buy it, but I think it's worth the buy. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. So these non-positive laws without a positive law citation, even if it says it's codified or it's enacted or whatever, if it doesn't have a positive law semicolon citation, it's not constitutional law, and it's probably just some sort of offered a contract to create a system of cooperation between us all, And when someone defects, we're all worse off, and that whole situation is called the prisoner's dilemma. And you can read about it in this book. I'm sure there's other things written about it, but Word Farnsworth does a really good job explaining it. So with that, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you later.